From the Pep Radio Newsroom, this is the Morning News Blast for March 27th, 2025. No matter how hard we tried, we could not find a story filled with more ignorance and stupidity, but here it is. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's it. That's the story right there. Nah, just kidding. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican from Georgia, accused NPR and PBS of turning kids transgender ahead of subcommittee hearings she is chairing, where she will accuse the broadcasters of being anti American. PBS and NPR receive part of their budgets from the federal government. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which runs both PBS and NPR, receives about $500 million in federal funding each year, or about $1.60 from each American on average. The stations have been the targets of right-wing ire about excessive government spending for decades, despite the very tiny impact they have on the federal budget. And now that the Republicans have a federal trifecta, it looks like they're trying to end even the small amount of funding that public broadcasting gets. And to justify the funding cuts, Greene is accusing them of transing children. I'm looking forward to holding the hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m., where we will be shining an intense spotlight on how Americans' hard-earned tax dollars have been used by PBS and NPR and the type of public broadcasting programs and radio shows they have been pushing across the country for decades, she said on Newsmax yesterday. It has leaned further and further left, so much so that they now have drag queen story time instead of good old Sesame Street, she continued. There's absolutely no truth to that, folks, none whatsoever. It's unclear what she is referring to. PBS NewsHour aired a segment that discussed Drag Queen Story Hour in 2019. But PBS doesn't regularly air drag queen programming. Meanwhile, Sesame Street is still on the air after 50 plus years. They are now part of transing children, brainwashing children about gender, which proved to be one of the most important issues in the 2024 presidential election. That was a big loser for Democrats. Just ask Josh Parsons how well that worked out for him in Lancaster County. Anyway, according to the announcement of the subcommittee hearing, PBS and NPR's CEO will have to explain why the demonstrably biased news coverage they produce for an increasingly narrow and elitist audience should continue to be funded by the broad tax-paying public. These partisan so-called media stations dropped the ball on Hunter Biden's laptop, downplayed COVID-19 origins, and failed to properly report the Russian collusion hoax. She cited, wait a minute, hold on just a second. It's Pete Hegseth calling. I have to take this. Anyway, she went on to say now it's time for their CEOs to publicly explain the biased coverage. Folks, that's the news blast for this hour. You can't make this stuff up. If you're watching our news stories on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the Pep Radio channel. Up next, the National Weather Service forecast for the Meadville area here on Pep Radio.